It can be really hard to get enough protein every single day, especially on a super small budget. And while doing some research on high protein recipes, I noticed a lot of them are loaded with fat, and that is just not the direction I wanted to go in. So I went back to the drawing board and created several recipes using just $25 in groceries, and they're high protein, lower in fat, lower in sugar, and most of them are naturally gluten-free. So this is gonna be really fun and super delicious. So let's head to the store and see what we can find. Here is my list. So hopefully we can find some good deals. First, we need eggs. Let's go see what the prices are. Ooh, $1.92, what a deal, yay. Let's just get 1 dozen. You gotta check them, okay, make sure they wiggle. Perfect, okay. We need milk next. Do they have non-fat? I think we're gonna have to go with 1%. Okay, so 1% milk for $1.85. Yes. Next we need cottage cheese. I was hoping to find the low-fat cottage cheese, but I only see this one. 4% milk fat, $2.55 for this one. That'll have to work. All right, so there's that. Okay, Greek yogurt is next, $3.49 for non-fat. Trying to look for the lower fat options today. Okay, next we need some chickpeas, 87 cents. Let's see, here we go. And then this chickpea rotini for $2.69. And this one has 19 grams of protein for 1 cup, 20% iron, I love that, and 11 grams of fiber, 12 ounces of chickpea rotini. This is great. I'm super excited about this. Next we need 2 cans of black beans, 86 cents each, 6 grams of protein for half a cup, 5 grams of fiber for half a cup too, so that's great. And normally I would get these dry beans because they're so much cheaper to make from scratch, but on a strict budget we're just going to get the cans. But these are 32 ounces for $2.85, so that's a really good deal. Plus the pinto beans too, $3.95, and this is 4 pounds. So I'm using taco seasoning from home, but they have these packs for 49 cents, so that would be a really good deal. I'm just going to make mine from scratch though to avoid all of the extra sodium here. So we're going to do less salt. Also have a low sodium version, or less sodium, I should say, 25% off, 25% less sodium, but that's still 220 milligrams. So we'll just make it ourselves. So I saw they might have these spinach wraps on sale today. Let's see if we can find them. I am going to try to make them myself. Oh, here we go, $1.89. Spinach herb, let's see what's in it. How much protein? 6 grams of protein for 1 wrap, 200 calories. But see, this has wheat flour, so I'm going to try to make them without flour. But this would be a good option if you could have flour. $1.89, and that comes with how many? 6? Yeah. And then sun-dried tomato is the other one. 5 grams protein and 3 grams of fiber. But $1.89 is a really good price. Let's just try to make them ourselves, though. Okay, so next we need spinach for $1.39. Find a good date. Okay, this one looks pretty good. And then I'll also get a cucumber for 65 cents. Let's get a nice large cucumber today. Oh, that one looks a little wonky though. I don't know about that. This one looks really good. Nice and firm. Okay, perfect. So 65 cents for the cucumber. $1.39 for the spinach. Next we need bell peppers, $1.79. It says a 3-pack. I was hoping to get 4. 3-packs will have to do, I think. Alright, I think these will have to do. Just make sure they're fresh. Next we'll get some bananas, 45 cents a pound. I'm thinking 6 bananas. This is 7. Let's see how much these weigh. Okay, that's a little bit, because these are huge. Okay, so that's better. A little over 2 pounds. So let's do that. It's 5 large bananas. Okay, so let's get 2 tomatoes. These are 88 cents a pound. Let's just get 2. Let's put it on the cart. We'll wash it really good when we get home. So let's say that's probably about 50 cents. Okay, so next we need to get 1 can of tuna. Only 87 cents for a can. That's such a good price. We just need 1. And there is 25 grams of protein in 1 can. And I think I'll use this for 2 of the meals. And let's see, 110 calories. Okay, so just 1 can, 87 cents. Okay, so next I need to get cheddar. Let's see, I wanted to look at the fat content. Okay, 9 grams of fat. I wonder if the sharp and extra sharp are different. No, the extra sharp has more flavor, and it's $3.79 for a pound. So that should work out. I just want to look at Colby Jack. Okay, so exactly the same. So let's just stick with the extra sharp cheddar for $3.79. Here. Okay, and the last thing is frozen peas. So half a cup of peas is 5 grams of protein and 5 grams of fiber. So that's awesome. And there are how many servings in here? 4 servings. And that's 99 cents for these. So I love that they have protein in them though. That's awesome. I think that should be it. All right, so that is everything. Let's go see what the total is. Okay, our total today was $26.12. Found a lot of great deals today. Before we get started on the recipes, I want to mention that all of the information I'm sharing with you here is from an app called MyFitnessPal. I entered in all of the ingredients for all these recipes, and that is where I'm getting the numbers from for protein, fat, and calories. It's going to greatly depend on the types of ingredients that you decide to choose, so just keep that in mind. This is just a suggestion and just based on the things that I was able to find. I did a lot of research here to try to keep this a lower fat, low sugar, higher protein, which is around 20 to 40 grams per meal, and I'm hoping that you love these recipes, but again, make adjustments as needed to suit your particular tastes and your nutritional needs. This is just a suggestion, but I do have lots of other tips and tricks for getting more protein. So let's get started on all the recipes. One of the first things I want to do for myself is get my breakfast meal prep done. This will ensure my entire week is set up for success. So I'm going to go ahead and start making my cottage cheese spinach egg bake. This is so delicious, so full of flavor and really nice and moist, and it freezes really well and reheats really well too. So hopefully you love this one as much as I do. So first I'm greasing an 8x8 casserole dish with butter, but you can use oil or a spray or just use a nonstick container. Whatever that you have on hand is fine. Then in a mixing bowl, I'm cracking 9 eggs, adding about a half a cup of my 1% milk, but you can definitely use non-fat or whole fat milk, whatever you like or whatever you have on hand. And then 1 cup of cottage cheese. And again, here I'm using the full fat, the 4%. That's all I could find for cottage cheese, but if you can find the low fat, definitely use that. And I'm just going to give it a good whisk. And if you like, you can use a blender instead of whisking it. If you really don't like those cottage cheese curds, you can do that, whatever works for you. Then I'm going to mix in 4 ounces of cheddar cheese that I've shredded by hand and 2 cups of fresh spinach and a little bit of salt and pepper. Give that a good mix until all of the spinach is completely covered in the egg mixture. This does take about a minute or so of mixing together to make sure that it's completely combined. And after that, I'm just going to pour it into the prepared baking dish and bake it in my preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 40 to 50 minutes. Now, when I did bake this, I noticed that it took a little bit longer than I had anticipated. I thought it was only going to be about a 30-minute time. So it really does depend on what size casserole dish you're using. Just make sure that you're checking that the middle is set. You can use a toothpick to check and make sure it comes out mostly clean in the middle to make sure those eggs are completely cooked through and set. And after that, I just cut it into 6 pieces. You can do up to 8 pieces if you like. And I wrapped them up in parchment after they cooled a little bit, chilled those, and then I froze them so I could have later on. When I entered all of the ingredients into MyFitnessPal, it turns out that this ends up being a lower calorie meal for breakfast. It's about 219 calories per serving if you're doing 6 servings, roughly 19 grams of protein per serving, and 14 grams of fat. So this serving by itself is not a lower fat meal, just to be clear. You can use lower fat cheeses though, like a low fat mozzarella perhaps, or a lower fat cottage cheese. Again, I was just using what I could find. So just make adjustments based on your nutritional needs and what you can find, what you have on hand, and just make it work for you. But I did pair this with a banana for breakfast to make sure that I got enough calories to give myself some energy, because 200 calories is just not enough for me personally in the morning, and I'll be reaching for a snack pretty quickly afterwards. So just keep that in mind. mind, it's a light breakfast. Pair it with some fruit or veggies to go with it if you can, and really make it a well-rounded, complete breakfast. But you can see I just put it in a freezer bag and it was ready to go for the week. For my 7th breakfast this week, I just had a half a cup of cottage cheese with a little bit of blueberries on top. You can use any fruit or veggie that you have on hand or some honey to make this breakfast, but it's 11 grams of fat or so and only 86 calories. So pair it with a banana or whatever you have on hand to try to make it a complete breakfast. Next, I'm whipping up some homemade spinach cottage cheese wraps. Now, I saw this idea on a TikTok or a reel somewhere and I had to try it. I saw a lot of comments saying that it just did not work and it ended up being scrambled eggs. And through my testing, I did find the first recipe just wasn't quite right. So I made some adjustments and I got it to work just fine. I will say that practice does make perfect with this. I blended together half a cup of fresh spinach, a quarter cup of cottage cheese, 3 eggs, and 1/8 a teaspoon of pepper. So I don't need salt because the cottage cheese is really nice and salty. Now I'm heating a non-stick skillet on low heat, very important. Once it's hot, I did brush it with a small amount of oil. You can put some butter instead, whatever you have on hand. You can use oil spray. Then I'm pouring about a quarter of the mixture into the pan. I'm swirling the pan so the mixture makes a large circle, and then I'm going to let that set completely before I touch it. I want the bottom to be browned, and I'm just carefully bringing up the edges. You have to be super careful at this point. I'm using a spatula that has a little bit of oil, and then I'm actually using my fingers here to lift it and turn it. You can see my first one did not turn out perfectly, and that's okay. It gets better as it goes, and then I just make sure I brown the other side as well. So I'm just going to continue doing that. Just make sure that you're really careful. If you don't want to use your fingers, then don't. Just use a spatula. Just be really careful when you go underneath the wrap because it is very, very delicate. And if you push on it too much with the spatula, it will end up being scrambled eggs. So those are my tips for making the wraps. This recipe ends up making 4 wraps, and each one ends up being about 4 grams of fat, 6 grams of protein, and 65 calories. And I'm going to be using this to make 4 lunches during the week, so I can have something a little bit more easy and grab and go, so I can wrap it up ahead of time and just eat it really quickly for lunch. So it's a really great option if you're bringing it to work and you want to meal prep ahead of time. Then we've got all the wraps ready to go, so we can go ahead and make those lunches. Now, while they're cooling, I did separate them with parchment because I didn't want them to stick together. And once they completely cooled, I was able to stack them and just roll them up in the parchment and put them in the fridge until I was ready to use them. This first lunch idea is a buffalo ranch chickpea wrap. Now, in a small mixing bowl, I'm combining a quarter cup of cottage cheese, a quarter cup of Greek yogurt, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of onion powder, and half a teaspoon of dried parsley. I'm just going to mix that on up and set that aside. Feel free to add any seasonings that you love to this as well. And if you want it to be a thinner ranch sauce, you can add a little bit of milk to this to thin it out. And of course, you can put it in the blender if you really don't like the curds from cottage cheese, and hopefully you won't be able to tell a difference. Now, I'm going to go ahead and prep a bunch of cucumbers for a few days here to keep in the refrigerator so they're easy and I don't have to slice them every day. And I'm using the Berman's hot sauce from Aldi, which is a dupe on the Frank's red hot sauce, I think. And I'm saving the aquafaba from the chickpeas, the can of chickpeas. That's just the water from the chickpeas. I'm just going to save it and I'll show you what I'm going to do with it later. Now, in a large pan, I'm heating some oil and I'm adding my chickpeas, seasoning with some garlic powder, and then I'm just going to saute those until they're crispy. This takes about 6 to 7 minutes, maybe longer. We want to make sure we're getting really nice, crispy chickpeas. It makes a huge difference in this recipe. After the chickpeas are nice and crispy, I'm adding about a quarter cup of the buffalo hot sauce and stirring frequently for about a minute more or so, and just until it's nice and hot and a little bit thickened. Now, if you don't like hot sauce, you can use any sauce that you love for this. I'm using hot sauce because it is a lower sugar option, but again, you can use barbecue sauce or anything that you love and it will turn out amazing. Just think of anything that you love that pairs well with ranch and just use that for the sauce. Now I'm going to go ahead and start making my wraps. I'm putting my cottage cheese ranch mixture down first in a nice little layer there on the wrap, and then I'm just going to top that with my chickpeas. And I'm making 2 wraps with these chickpeas here and that ranch cottage cheese mixture, and I'm going to top it with some spinach, fresh spinach. This is optional, but you can if you like, and then some of those cucumbers, which really add a nice crunch. Now, I would recommend just sort of slicing them in sticks next time for a texture change instead of doing the thin slices. I think that would have been a good choice. That's just a personal preference, though. I think it needed a little bit more crunch, and just making sure those chickpeas are really nice and crispy too. Then I'm just going to roll this on up, and then I can roll it in parchment paper to save for later, or I can slice it and have it right away. It's up to you depending on when you want to eat it, but it's really good chilled too, or you can serve it up warm like this, whatever you prefer. And that's it for this dish. This lunch comes in at about 22 grams of protein, 10 grams of fat, and 319 calories. Next, I'm making the other two lunches with my can of tuna. Now, before you skip forward because you don't like tuna, let me just recommend that you can use canned chicken instead for this, and it will work beautifully as well. Just follow the recipe exactly the same, just substitute the tuna for canned chicken. So mixing together the tuna after I've drained the liquid out with a 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt, a little bit of garlic powder, onion powder, and pepper just to taste, and then I'll give that a good stir until it's completely combined. And you can mix it up as much as you want. You can add more Greek yogurt if you like, and you can add any seasonings that you love to this to really make it your own. You can add some hot sauce, some red chili flakes, just really make this recipe your own. But this is the basic way that I like to make tuna. And for extra crunch, you can add some celery or some onion that's finely chopped, whatever you like to add to this. Now I'm just going to go ahead and add that to the wrap. Again, I'm making 2 wraps with this can of tuna, but that's up to you. You can use it as you like. Then I'm topping that with some tomatoes, fresh spinach, some cucumbers, and I did have some red onions on hand, so I added a little bit of that, but that's optional, of course. I just think red onions add a lot to tuna salad, but that's just my personal preference. So go ahead and do whatever you like. And then again, I just wrapped it up, and you can wrap it in parchment after that to keep it nice and fresh and put it in the refrigerator for later. It's a really great grab and go lunch. And just be aware this is a low calorie lunch as well at about 160 calories, but it does have about 20 grams of protein and 5 grams of fat or so, depending on what you use. Again, it just varies. So this could actually end up being a snack if you prefer, but it is a really great option to really pack in the protein without adding a ton of calories or fat. Just make sure you're getting enough calories throughout the day and just make adjustments as needed. I added a little bit of hot sauce on mine, of course. It was so good. This next meal idea is a chickpea rotini and cheese sauce with peas. Now it's going to be enough for 6 servings. So I actually ended up having this for lunch for 3 days, and then I had it 4 days for dinners as well. So it's really great, comes together super fast, and it's a very, very easy dish to make. So I'm just going to be blending up about 2 cups of milk, 1 cup of cottage cheese, 8 ounces of cheddar cheese. Then I'm seasoning with about a teaspoon of ground mustard, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. Now I'm just going to blend that all up until it's nice and smooth, which is great because if you don't like the curds in cottage cheese, I promise you're not going to be able to even tell it's there. This dish is really amazing. And I'm using this chickpea penne, or chickpea rotini, I should say. You can use penne instead if you like. They have both options at Aldi. Or you can use any pasta that you like for this. But again, don't forget that the chickpea rotini or penne does contain the 19 grams of protein per serving. So just keep that in mind if you're changing up the pasta for this dish, that it will change the protein content. Now, in a very large skillet, I'm just heating my cheese mixture until hot. I don't want it to boil because I don't want it to scorch. So I'm just making sure I heat that on a low medium heat or so with the frozen peas added. I'm just adding the entire container of frozen peas. It's about 2 cups or so. So I'm just going to add the entire thing. And in the meantime, I'm also boiling some water that I've salted and following the directions exactly on the box. Make sure you don't overcook the chickpea rotini. It really makes a huge difference in how it turns out. And I'm saving a little bit of water to thicken the sauce if needed. And then I'm adding some cheddar cheese to the sauce just to help get that nice stringiness to the sauce that I want. And then I'll add my cooked pasta. Now, I did forget to add the water here to thicken up the sauce, but again, use that water from the boiling noodles to make the sauce more creamy. As it sits though, it will thicken, as you can see, after about 10 minutes or so, and it thickens nicely. So all the leftovers turn out really delicious, but again, if you overcook the pasta, it will fall apart when you try to reheat the leftovers. So just try to make sure that you cook it exactly like the directions say on the box. And this is just a really great lunch and dinner option. And this dish comes in at about 26 grams of protein, 10 grams of fat, and 350 calories. So it is on the lower end of calories as well. So just keep that in mind when you're eating throughout the day. Next, I need to prepare some taco seasoning to make my next dinner idea. Now, this homemade taco seasoning recipe is available in my new meal planning guide. I have a digital download version, and I also have a paperback and a hardcover available. So you can go ahead and check those out, or I'll also include the recipe down below in the description if you just want to grab it really quickly. I'm just mixing together some chili powder, cumin, black pepper, paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, and oregano. I'm also adding some salt, but we do lower sodium in this household, so I do a little bit less, but you can add as much or as little salt as you like, which is the beauty of making at home, because then you can really make it your own and add any seasonings that you like. Now, this next dinner idea is one of my all-time favorites. It's bell pepper nachos, and it's really an easy dish. I also have this in my meal planning guide or my book. You can also get it on my blog for free in the post that I have down in the description. So whatever you choose, I just like to have it printed out so I can have it super easily, because I make this pretty frequently. And you can make this vegetarian or use meat in this dish. In this case, I'm just using the beans. So really just make it your own. I've done it with ground turkey before too, and that turned out amazing. So really just make this however you like and add any ingredients that you love. First, I'm just going to slice my bell peppers into wedges so they can hold the filling, and I'll add that to a mixing bowl and just toss that with some oil. I'm using avocado oil, but you can use any oil that you have on hand, and then season with some cumin, chili powder, and garlic powder. Now, don't be shy on the seasonings. You really want to make sure that these are seasoned really nicely. It makes a huge difference in how this dish turns out, so don't be shy. Mix that all together, and then again, season some more. I'm not kidding, add a lot of seasonings here. Then I'm just going to put this on a parchment lined baking sheet. You can use foil, or if you don't have either, just put it directly on the baking sheet, and we're just going to bake that at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for about 10 minutes while we work on the mixture. Now, the mixture, I usually use meat in this mixture, but beans is what we have on hand. So you can do ground turkey or ground beef with this to really stretch it. But again, today we're just using the black beans. So I'm going to be using the 2 cans of black beans that I've drained and rinsed. I'm just going to add that to a large pan with a little bit of oil. And then I'm just going to stir and heat that through for about 2 to 3 minutes and add my taco seasoning. Now, after I add my taco seasoning and everything's nice and hot, I like to add a little bit of water, about a 1/4 cup or so, not too much water, because I want to make sure this mixture is nice and saucy. So I'm just going to mix it up, bring it to a boil, and reduce the heat to a simmer, and just let that simmer for about 5 to 10 minutes until it's nice and thickened and saucy. I do want to mention this is a really great dish to add your cooked leftover chicken or brisket, tri-tip. It's really great when you have just a small amount of, cooked meats left over too, so you can just heat it through, with the bean mixture. So it's really awesome, very versatile recipe. So now I'm just going to pull those bell peppers out of the oven and start adding the filling on top, and just pack it in until it's all used up. And you could use a casserole dish instead for this, whatever works for you and whatever makes it easy. Then I'm just going to top it with the cheddar cheese. And I will mention that using some mozzarella or pepper jack, Colby Jack, any cheese really works out great for this. Then I'll just put it back in the oven for about 10 minutes more until everything is bubbly and melty. And then I'm usually topping this with Greek yogurt and usually some sort of hot sauce. And this dish comes in at about 370 calories or so, 20 grams of protein, and about 15 grams of fat. And I did finish the cucumber as snacks throughout the week, just, cutting them into sticks like this. I also had some handfuls of nuts throughout the day as well. And I want to be sure and mention that this particular meal plan is lower on calories. So just make sure you're getting enough calories throughout the day. For me, I was on a calorie deficit this particular week, so it worked out well for me, but I made sure that I did have enough calories throughout the day for my personal nutritional needs. Now, I was making some homemade peanut butter and decided to show you a dessert option that you could make. You can just take a little bit of nut butter, add some cottage cheese and a little bit of honey, blend that up in a food processor or a blender, and then we're just going to pour this out into a small dish. This is just one serving of a dessert that I really enjoyed this week. I topped it with some mini chocolate chips and some whole peanuts, and this ended up being a no-bake peanut butter cheesecake cup. It was so delicious. I ended up making it again with Greek yogurt instead of cottage cheese, same toppings and everything, and that turned out amazing as
as well. So there were a lot of really great options for making desserts with Greek yogurt or cottage cheese. Just check out the internet and find some great options because they have a ton these days, especially with the way that Reels and TikToks are going. Lots of people make these delicious no-bake desserts using very few ingredients. So here's me making the same exact dessert using Greek yogurt instead. And again, just a couple of teaspoons or a tablespoon of peanut butter. You can use nut butter, or I think you can use, it is a tahini, I believe is what they call it. I think you can use that as well in place of nut butters, but I have not personally tried that. But you can just try anything that you like here, experiment. And of course I added a little bit of honey for sweetness, but again, you can add anything or omit anything and just play around with it. You can, freeze this and make it a frozen yogurt dish. That would be amazing as well. Next, I decided to experiment with the aquafaba, which is the water from the can of chickpeas I had. I had no plans for this. I wasn't exactly sure, but I knew that it could be used in place of eggs in a lot of recipes. So I found this recipe for, I believe it's chickpea water meringue is what it's called. And I decided to go ahead and give this a go. I added a little bit of my homemade vanilla extract, which I just used the pods with some vodka to make this, and it lasts months and months. Very inexpensive, budget-friendly way to make vanilla extract. I do have that recipe if you'd like. And this recipe also called for cream of tartar and some powdered sugar. Now, after making this recipe, me and my daughter both thought these were way too sweet, but that could be personal preference because my son loved them. So if this looks like something fun to you and you love meringues, definitely give this one a try. It's not my recipe. I have it linked in the blog post for you, so if you want to check it out. I just thought it was really fun and an interesting experiment because I've honestly never worked with aquafaba before, and I really got a lot of ideas from doing this, although it did take a really ridiculously long time to whip this into stiff peaks. I want to say it took like 15 minutes or so, and that's a really long time. My stand mixer actually started malfunctioning halfway through, so then I had to use this hand mixer that I have an attachment with a whisk, so it just wasn't great. But I think if you had a stand mixer that just worked just fine, it would work great. And it's a fun little way to make aquafaba into something else because you're getting all the extra nutrients and you're not having to use eggs. So it's pretty cool. And of course, nothing goes to waste when you actually use it for something. So I think it's really fun and interesting. And I think I want to experiment whipping this up and maybe making some Belgian waffles with this mixture because I usually use egg whites for that. And so I think that might be a really fun recipe to try using the aquafaba. But if you have any recipes that you currently have using that, I'd love to hear it in the comments too, and let me know what you've done with it, because I'm personally always trying to look for ways to reduce my waste and just use all of the ingredients that I have on hand and really stretch my budget. That's just one way that I am able to spend less every single week is I really try to challenge myself to learn something new and try different recipes, even if they're really unfamiliar to me. And I feel like maybe I don't know what I'm doing. But as you can see, this was really fun and the kids really enjoyed trying this too. I used some food dyes. I also used beetroot powder for one of the colors for the meringues here, and that worked great. But I will say that if you are trying this recipe, I will say that if you over mix this, it's kind of a delicate mixture here, and some of them did end up melting in the oven. Again, I have never worked with meringues. I've never made meringues in my entire life, so I'm sure I did something wrong, but it was really fun to give it a try, and I highly recommend everybody try something new just to kind of expand your knowledge and maybe just learn a new way to use a new ingredient that you're not familiar with. I did have a few snacks throughout my day, and these are just some options. I didn't have these on hand at the time, but these are some extra options that you could consider if you're trying to get a little extra protein every single day. I like to do nuts pretty often. I just found this one at Aldi. Raw almonds, pecans, and pistachio kernels. This one is 5 grams of protein. In 1 ounce, there's 8 servings in this container, and it was pretty affordable too, so I love that. You get a little bit of fiber in this one as well. Pepitas, these are roasted with salt. And these ones have 9 grams of protein for a 1/4 cup, and there's 6 servings in here. So that's a really great option if you're looking for a lot of protein in a small amount. And since pepitas have such high protein in a small amount, you could even add some of this to your tuna wrap or the chickpea wrap to add a little bit more protein as well. This is great to top salads with and other options like that. It's really great. Canned chicken is also a really great snack option. You can add a little bit of Greek yogurt, like I was mentioning earlier in the tuna salad. You could do that with chicken as well. and you get 11 grams of protein in just 2 ounces of this chicken. And this can has 4 servings here, and this one was I think $3 for the can, so that's not too bad either. Pink salmon in a can. This is wild Alaskan salmon, 17 grams of protein in 3 ounces, and this can has 5 of those servings, so that's really a bunch of protein in a small container. I believe this is around $3 as well, so getting 17 grams of protein in just 3 ounces, that is incredible. You can either mix it with some Greek yogurt or just have it as is. It's just a really amazing budget-friendly option. And if you do eat meat, like red meat, they have lots of jerky options too, like this gochujang grass-fed beef jerky, and this has, let's see, 10 grams of protein in 1 serving, and there's 2 servings in the entire container here. These are a little bit more pricey though. They're gonna run about $3 or $4 just for 2 ounces. I found this organic beef jerky as well, and this one's 2.5 ounces, and again, 11 grams of protein in 1 serving, and if you ate the whole bag, it would be 28 grams of protein. So that's an option. Really great for on the go, but these ones are a little bit more pricey, and these ones are a little bit more budget friendly. And of course, if you don't eat meat, then the trail mixes and almonds, pepitas, things like that might work better for you. And I do want to mention that although a lot of these things are naturally gluten-free, I'm sure if you know that you can't have gluten, that you want to check the packaging and just make sure that it's gluten-free before purchasing it. I have done some research. I personally can have gluten, so I'm not 100% sure which brands are best for that. So just make sure that you're looking at the labels and just making sure that you double check before you make any purchases. And just a couple of notes on the sugar and the fat content. A lot of jerkies don't have a ton of fat. These ones are around 1.5 grams of fat per serving, and the nuts, of course, are going to have more fat. You've got 15 grams of fat in a serving of both of these nuts. The chicken, the canned chicken, only has 1 gram of fat per serving, and the salmon has 4 grams of fat per serving. So this is a little bit higher fat, but not terribly high. And of course, sugar, that's going to depend on what kind of things that you get, if they have any sugar added and things like that. Usually with jerkies, you can see if there is some sort of seasoning or marinade or something like that added. So the gochujang one has 9 grams of sugar, whereas the regular one here just has 4 grams of sugar. So you definitely want to check the packaging, look at the the labels and things like that, and just make sure you're getting what you think that you're getting. I hope y'all loved that video and at least got a little inspiration for things to make in your home. I do have my new digital meal plan available for download right now. That's available down below in the description for you. It includes lots of other meal plans, grocery lists that you can bring with you, and just lots of budget-friendly recipes and lots of tips and tricks. So be sure to check that out. And YouTube thinks that you want to watch another video, so be sure to check that out over here, over there, wherever it is. And have a wonderful day. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.